Hey bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm bringing you my November wrap-up. I had a great reading month in November and I read 5 awesome books. I had 1 4-star book, 3 4.5-star books, and 1 5-star book. So the very first book that I read in November, I actually started the last week of October, but didn't finish it until a week into November. And that book is The Monstrumologist by Yancey. So I picked this book up at the end of October because I was still kind of in a Halloween-y mood, wanting to read something kind of spooky, and this was recommended to me by a couple blogger friends whose opinions I really trust. So The Monstrumologist is about a boy who works for a monstrumologist, which is a scientist who studies monsters. So this has a historical setting, but it has some supernatural elements in it, so I don't know if that would be considered like paranormal or urban fantasy, something like that. I think it's set in a colonial America time period. The way that it's written, it's like you're reading this boy's journal when he was younger, which I really like. I wasn't really sure what to expect when I picked up this book because I hadn't heard the greatest things about Rick Yancey's Fifth Wave series, which I haven't read yet, but I think I will now because I really enjoyed this book. I was not disappointed by this Halloween read. It wasn't the type of scary that made me jump or scared of the dark or anything like that. It definitely gave me some creepy vibes. I have never been so grossed out by a book before. It's very descriptive and it describes some really disgusting things, and it made me picture things in my mind that I would never want to picture. Some of my deepest fears were definitely described in this book and it was really gross, but I loved it. I gave The Monstrumologist 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in November was In the Afterlight by Alexandra Bracken. This is the third and final book in the Darkest Minds trilogy. This is a sci-fi dystopian series. In this futuristic United States, kids start to develop these crazy superpowers and the adults become afraid of children and put them into like concentration camps. The series follows a girl named Ruby who in the very first book develops some powers and gets sent to a concentration camp where she later escapes, and series kind of follows along in her adventures from there. I love all the characters in this series, especially my new book boyfriend, Liam Stewart. I really loved this conclusion to the series. I feel like everything wrapped up really nicely. Like the other 2 books in the series, I thought it was really fast-paced and really exciting. It's definitely one of those books where I had to like cover up the next page to make sure I didn't accidentally read ahead. I really recommend this series to people who like dystopian because this is now one of my favorite dystopian series. I gave In the Afterlight 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in November was The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslye Walton. This was actually a buddy read with a couple friends named Lucy and Shoshana. This book is a magical realism family saga. It's about this girl, Ava Lavender, who is born with wings. The first half of the book is actually more about Ava's grandmother and mother and kind of like their family history, and then the second half of the book is all about Ava herself. This is definitely not a fast-paced or exciting read. It's more of a slow story. It's just about this girl and her family and the things that happen to them. I probably should have known this going in, but it's not exactly a happy story. After all, the title is The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender. The writing's very beautiful. It's kind of poetic and lyrical. I really enjoyed the writing style. The ending is one of those that's a little open to interpretation, which I usually hate. I didn't hate this one, it was alright, but I definitely wish it had ended a little differently. I gave The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was More Than This by Patrick Ness. Now, if you've been following me recently, you know that I have been fangirling over Patrick Ness ever since I started reading the Chaos Walking trilogy in October, I think. I knew that I wanted to read more Patrick Ness, but I didn't think I'd be picking him up again so soon. But one day I was at the library and I just saw More Than This on the shelf and it was calling to me. I had to pick it up right away. And I'm so glad that I did because I loved this book. I went into this book pretty much completely blind. So let me tell you what I knew when I picked up this book. All I knew was that it was about a boy who died and wakes up. Now that's not a spoiler, that happens in the very first chapter and is also on the back of the book. I really suggest you go into the book knowing doing just that because I loved discovering what was going on as I went along. It's one of those books where you don't really know what's going on for kind of a big chunk of the book, which usually drives me crazy, but I thought it was done really well and I was super engaged the whole time, and it wasn't like annoying that I didn't understand what was going on. For those of you who want to know more, I will say a little bit more about the book right now, but for those of you who don't want to know more, I say skip to the next book that I talk about. I include all the different times for each book in my description bar, so you can just hop down there and click on the next book that I'm going to talk about. But for those of you who want to know more, this is a sci-fi dystopian book. It also has a gay main character, which I really enjoyed. It was such a refreshing read. And it's also told using a lot of flashbacks, so half of the story is kind of told in the present and half of the story is told in flashbacks to things that happened before the main character died. I love this book so much and I gave it 4.5 stars. So the very last book that I read in November was Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. So this was another buddy read for me. I read this with Emily from Emily Reads Everything, also with much encouragement from our dear friend Brittany from Brittany's Book Rambles. Brittany loves this series. She talks about it all the time, and Emily and I both hadn't read it and we wanted to, so we decided to do a buddy read, and Brittany was sort of our moderator for the buddy read and she picked out all of our stopping points. This book was fantastic and I can't believe I waited so long to read this. This is a YA high fantasy series and it's set in what's called the Grisha universe. The main character of this series is named Alina, and this first book starts with her in this army and they're trying to cross from one side of her country to the other side, but to do this they have to go through this area called the Shadowfold. And the Shadowfold is basically this area where it is completely pitch black, there's no light, and it's also filled with man-eating monsters. In this world there are people who can do magic and they're called Grisha, and I found the magic system in this book to be super interesting. I thought this book was action-packed and a super fun read. I love the romance in this book, and I just might have a new book boyfriend named Mal. Emily and I both really enjoyed this book and we picked up the next book right away. I gave Shadow and Bone 4.5 out of 5 stars. That's everything that I read in November. As always, if you want to hear more of my in-depth thoughts on these books, keep an eye out for their reviews, which will go up on my blog in the next month or so. Or you can let me know in the comments that you want to see a video review of one of these books and I can try to make that happen. If you've read any of these books or have any thoughts you want to share about them, let me know down in the comments and we can chat about it. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, or subscribe to see more content like this. That's all I have for now, so until I see you next time, bookworms, keep reading. Bye! Delete that part. And I had so let's get started. I don't like that. So let's get started. So let's get on into it. Is that right? Yeah. Leslye Walton. Setting, but has monsters in it, so supernatural. The adults in the world get This is a sci-fi. For those of you who don't know, this is a So if you haven't heard, this is I gave The Strange and Sorrow in October. This is I can't talk. This is the first book in a Is this play? My window is open. I can't do this. Okay. I'm almost done. I gave Shadow and Bone 4 out of 5 stars. Nope, I did not. That's all I have for now. So, see you next time. I don't know if I like that. I hope you read past bedtime. So that's all. Bye!